Welcome into the Fantasy Draft Room. I am Cody Smith at Cody Smith TFDR on X, and y'all can also find me in the Discords if you know where I'm floating around in those waters. But today, the New York Giants continuing the projections for 2025 series. This is day 8, probably day 9 by the time you're watching it because this one's going to drop pretty late at night, but still under the 12 p.m. window for Standard Central Time. So it's still on 32 days, 32 projections pace. But we are wrapping out the NFC East with this New York Giants team, and an interesting team because this is the first one that we're getting to where I'm actually projecting a quarterback change. Obviously, when you draft a rookie QB in round 1, even if it is in the later part of round 1, you expect for that rookie to be potentially getting onto the field at some time in the rookie season, and I do have that projected out here. But we can start off with this team with the offensive historicals, as we always do, and we do have a pretty good track record here with Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka going into the 2025 season. They've been together for the last 3 years. So that 3-year average is a good number for us. If we're looking at those big 6 statistics over those 3-year average, passing attempts is averaged at 543, rushing attempts at 466, 343 of those going to the running back, 101 RB targets, 368 targets for wide receivers, and 76 targets for tight ends is that 3-year average. If we're looking for any discrepancies between last year and that 3-year average, we see it definitely evident in the passing attempts. They spiked all the way up at 591 last year. They had never been at above 520 in the first 2 years of the Brian Daboll system. So you see about a 70 pass attempt increase. And this is just because they had such a horrible time running the football last year that they basically had to turn into a short game PPR with the Wan'Dale Robinson and Malik Neighbors show and pepper them with 170 and like 140 targets or whatever the crazy numbers were for the Wan'Dale Robinson season. They basically became a short pass instead of run game. So that number jumped all the way up to 70. And I do have that number coming back down, especially with the addition of Russell Wilson, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Again, with that change, then your rushing attempts did go down from 23 and your 3-year average to 24. The RB targets they've gone down each of the last 3 years. So I'm interested to see how that goes with the addition of a person like Cam Scatterbo into this backfield and still a good pass catching back with Tyrone Tracy. Wide receiver targets obviously jumped up last year with how much they were peppering Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale. And then tight end targets have been a little bit of a mismatch depending upon what season you're in. So I think about that 76 number looks to be probably where we're coming in at. And actually, we're jumping ahead a little bit. That's exactly where the total tight end targets came in at. So we can get into this total team now. We're going to start it off with Russell Wilson and look at just the split of how I got to this 8 and 10 game split. If you look over the first course of the Giants' 8 games, there's a good chance that they are 1-7. I mean, it is a brutal opening schedule for the Giants. And if this team starts off 1-7, unfortunately, you don't have a nice time like a bye week. I think their bye week is week 14. So there's not like a bye week transition you can really do here. But if you start off 1-7 and Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka have to fight to save their jobs, I don't think you can put it on any longer than 2 months into the season to say, hey, Jackson Dart, we're going to throw you out there and hope that you can salvage, show enough to that we still have jobs next year. So I think that 8, 9, 10 game split, if everything does go wrong, now they might be better than expected. The defense looks really scary. So maybe they win a couple more games in there, but it looks brutal. So 8's the number that I settled on. You can really move that around wherever you want, but 8 was the number in the week that I settled on for them to make the transition to Jackson Dart for the 2025 season. And then we can actually get into the Russell Wilson. Beforehand, I will just say the Jackson Dart line for everything, just because it is a rookie and it's difficult to have any idea how they're going to use them, especially in this offense, as you have a new quarterback coming in, a quarterback who doesn't throw nearly as much as Daniel Jones has in the past. Russell Wilson's more low attempts and high efficiency numbers. So I basically just took the Russell Wilson line of 8 games and then used the attempts number for that, saying that he might throw for the same number of passing attempts, and then lowered down the completion percentage, yards per completion, just lowered down the efficiency of everything overall, and then upped his rushing a little bit. So we won't get into too much of the Jackson Dart line, but I wanted to set that precedent for how I built out the Russell Wilson line and then why the Jackson Dart line comes in where it's at. So that way you get to the total 17 game passing attempts. So for Russell Wilson, though, we'll start off there. He has, like I said, not really been a high volume passer ever in his career. Highest that he's ever put up in a single season was in 2020. He had 558 passing attempts. over the course of 16 games. Not sure what those numbers would look like if you put them to like a 17 game pace. I'm sure some of them start to come in closer to that 520 number. But even the last 4 years, he's never played 17 games since we flipped to that type of a format. But we see passing attempt numbers coming at 400, 483, 447, and 336. I'm not going to bore you with how many passing attempts per game that breaks down into, but it's 251 is what we get to the number, or the total number of games for 8 games played for Russell Wilson. Looking at his passing attempts completion percentage numbers, he has a career average of 64.8. The last 3 years have been 60, 66, and 63%. I have him coming in basically right at that career average of 64.54. The offense, I think, gets a little bit more vertical with hopefully the O-line getting a little bit better. You don't have to get the ball out as quickly. You have a little bit of a run game. So I have it coming in right around the career average, and then these yards per attempts and yards per completion numbers comparatively to the last years of the Giants does go up, and your completion percentage, I believe it does as well. So the yards per attempt number it comes in as a flat 7. The yards per attempt numbers that he's put up the last 3 years, 7.3, 6.9 and 7.4 last year with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think they're going to be as downfield and explosive as the Pittsburgh Steelers were last year, so a 7 feels about right. And that career average number is 7.7, but we're not in the prime of the Russell Wilson experience anymore, so not totally at the top. The 10.5 yards per completion, if we look, again, the last couple of years, 12.1, 10.3, 11.6. His career average is an 11.9. Again, kind of merging these two between what the offense was last year with the Daniel Jones and crew and assembly of everything they had to do for the quarterback position last year, and then what Russell Wilson, I think, excels at, and trying to marry and merge those two a little bit. The 11 touchdowns in 8 games versus Jackson Dart's 11 touchdowns in 10 games. Obviously, the efficiency just gets a little bit lower whenever you put the rookie in there. We'll see what he does. He could obviously exceed what the Russell Wilson experience is, but if somebody who's been in the league that long, I think that you're going to have a little bit, at least maybe at the beginning, that affects the overall outcome of the 7 of the 10 games. I think the efficiency of Russell Wilson will still be better, even though they might have to make the switch. So 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 11 touchdowns for Jackson Dart, and 6 interceptions. The total number of rushes, I think the average here for Russell Wilson has been about 3.6, which with as old as Russell Wilson is going into his age 37 season, pretty incredible that he's still rushing the ball even at that number and with this type of yards per attempt number. Coming in with 29 rushes for 4.28 yards per attempt at 124 yards and the 1 touchdown. I did put the rushing per game numbers up for Jackson Dart a little bit, and I bumped that yards per attempt up number. Obviously, you just have the fresher legs, the more youth, and he did run decently well at Ole Miss, so that number comes in at 201 yards and 2 touchdowns. The total overall rank for those two coming at 32 and 34, so that's not a points per game rank for these two yet. But we'll see where that comes out. If you want to go take a look at this sheet, you can do that in here, and you can actually see where they come out in the points per game rank. It'll be in the comments, the link for it, and then I just have to give you access to it just so that I can track how many people are using it. But yeah, completely free. So if you want to see that, go into the sheet, click on the sheet, click on the link, and go find that out for yourself. We can then move into the running backs, and this room is definitely, it feels like, spearheaded by the Tyrone Tracy and the rookie Cam Skattebo. I will tell you right off at the beginning, I was very high on the Cam Skattebo. I was not one of the people fading him because he's slow, lumbering, doesn't move very well. I think that those things are very, very overblown. He might not have long, straight vertical speed, but I think he's definitely agile enough. He's a good pass catcher as well and can absolutely run people over with his head straight down through you as well. So I love myself some Cam Skattebo, and I do have him coming in here and taking over as the lead back over Tyrone Tracy. Definitely not saying that this is going to happen with 100% certainty or anything like that. I know a lot of people would probably say that Tyrone Tracy still has the leg up in this offense, but I think as just a pure between the tackles runner, you move Tyrone Tracy back into more of an efficiency-based role, and then you move Cam into a first and second down type of grinder. So that's kind of what I'm showing here. 216 of those rushes to Cam Skattebo. I do have that yards per attempt rush. I mean, the offensive line isn't completely overhauled yet. I still think they're going to be pretty inefficient on the ground. So 3.95 in the rookie year, coming in at 854 yards and 6 touchdowns. Through the air, if we look back at those RB targets, we have that number coming in at 101 for the RB. on the 3-year average, but last year it was 88. So I have that number taking a step down again as I had to move some of them. It felt like I still needed to move more of the targets to the wide receivers. So I took it away from the running backs here just because the Malik Neighbors and Darius Slayton Wandale, they have to get theirs. So we go into that 36 targets for Cam Skattebo. Pretty decent rookie running back average of catch rate at 27, 7.15 yards per reception for the 193 yards and 1 touchdown. And now we can get into the Tyrone Tracy, where we actually have at least a year of historical on what Tyrone Tracy did last year. He had 192 attempts in 17 games played. Now, he wasn't the starter for all those games. If we remember right, the Devin Singletary was still running as the starter for the first couple of weeks, and then we really started to see the transition. So on average, if you were to get his starting games in there, definitely higher than 192, but you do put a Cam Skattebo in there, who I think will take over a little bit more of that RB workload share on the ground. And then he comes in at 147 rushes over that 17 games. He was at and I lost my page here. There we go. Yards per attempt last year was at a 4.4. And so I'm taking that number down just a little bit to a 4.2 to give me 617 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. Last year, he had 5 touchdowns on the ground as well. Again, not always as the starter. You take a little bit more of a offensive jump. If Cam Skattebo and Tyrone Tracy are both getting the 11 touchdowns total, and we put 1 to Devin Singletary, the offense should be at least a little bit more efficient as we go forward into this season. Last year, he picked up a total of 53 targets through the air for 38 receptions. I'm now coming in here as I do think this is going to be a little bit more of a split. It feels like I should probably flip these around. Maybe the little bit of the edge goes to Tyrone Tracy over Cam Skattebo. But again, when I was building this, it's probably just the fact that I really do love myself some Cam Skattebo and think that he has a really good shot to take over this backfield. So this is just a personal bias one. I can definitely understand if y'all are on the other side of it. But I have him coming in here, splitting that RB workload through the air as well. 33 targets, catch rate of 72.23%. Last year, he was at a 71.7 catch rate. So that's just a little bit of a tick up for 183 yards off of that 7.63 yards per reception. He was at 7.5 last year, so right about where he was. And then 2 touchdowns for Tyrone Tracy through the air. We don't get into the Devin Singletary numbers. These numbers kind of just make up the rest of it. If we look at the RB rush share for the last couple of years, that number is coming in at a total of the 402. And so that's definitely higher than what we were at last year. But if you put both of these guys in the backfield, the RBs get a little bit better. The offensive line gets a little bit better to where you can actually rush the ball. I assume this number will jump up. It's coming in a little bit high for where I'm looking at. If we're looking at the 3-year average of being 343, so you could probably cut this down a little bit off of the Tyrone Tracy and Cam Skattebo shares a little bit of both, especially as you add in a little bit more rushing. No, you do add in less rushing because you have the Daniel Jones experience at the quarterback, which is probably where you're taking away some of those rushes that are not coming from the RB and adding the back end. So this is why this number actually takes a pretty good jump up to the 402. That leaves us now with the wide receivers that we can go into the main guy, our thumbnail feature player here in Malik Neighbors, one of the best rookie seasons that we have ever seen in the league from the wide receiver position, with 170 targets in only 15 games. The problem that I found with when I was trying to build this one out is if I take that 170 target pace and I try to put that to 17 games, especially when I've taken the passing attempts down, the numbers do not work, and he would be eating like 50% of all receiving work within this team. So it doesn't work to put Malik Neighbors all the way up there. I actually had to cut him down even from his only 15 games from last year to 150 targets on the 17 games is where the numbers had to finally work out at. And so there's also a little bit of that like stretch from, I think it was weeks 2 through 4 last year at the very beginning of the season, where he was averaging, like, if you were to take that 3-game sample size, it was like 18, 21, and 19 targets or something in the 3-game set. It was like 252 targets would have been his 3-game pace if you pace that out over 17 games. Just some ridiculous early season games for Malik Neighbors, and he was very good late in the season as well. But I had to drop him all the way down to 150 to make the numbers work for me. So not the explosive next step up level of production that we were going to be hoping for Malik Neighbors from where my numbers are going to be coming out at. 150 at a 64% catch rate. Last year, that number was at a 64.1, so right in line with where he was last year. 11.83 yards per reception is going to come from the Malik Nabers line of last year. We had a 11.0, so I do take a step up to almost a 12 yards per reception as you get a little bit more explosive with Russell Wilson and Jackson Dart. I think you could even see that number rise up a lot more. I don't want to overestimate that projection of a level of jump, but I do think this offense will be more downfield efficient, and Malik Nabers can be a big benefactor of that. So the yardage number is probably the least number that I feel is most confident about. I do feel very good about the actual target number coming down, though. So we'll see, and that probably depends on what they run with Jackson Dart. But that results in the 8 touchdowns. We do have a little bit of work on the ground that he got last year that I'm projecting they'll still use this year, and that has him coming in as wide receiver 16 overall on the year. Definitely not where a lot of people are trying to rank Malik Nabers right now, especially like the number 1 overall in Dynasty that I don't agree with. I would still have him in about that top 6-7 range, but definitely not the outcome that I want to see in projections for a top 10 wide receiver and a first, early, second draft pick in fantasy football right now. The Darius Slayton line coming in at 75 targets. This one's going to come from the last couple of years. We've got 71, 79, 71 targets in 16, 17, 16 games. Like the Darius Slayton experience with this offense has just been very, very steady every single year. And so I have him come in right around that line again, 75 targets. And the catch rate that he's put up over those last 3 years is 64, 63, and 54.9%. I have that jumping back up from the little bit of a down year last year to a 60. It came out at 60% flat with 45 receptions, 15.62 yards as he is that downfield threat. His career average is 15. Last year, he hit a career low in the last 3 years at 14.7. So we get a little bit of a jump back up. Again, more efficient Russell Wilson, Jackson Dart, and get a little bit more downfield as well for the 4 touchdowns. Wan'Dale Robinson is the last one that we get to talk about on this show because the remaining are just side pieces. I don't think we're going to see a Jalen Hyatt breakout this year. As long as the Darius Slayton role stays, I don't think Jalen Hyatt really has a path to getting on the field. But last year, the absolute explosion of 140 targets for only 699 yards at 7.5 yards per reception. I forget the year, but it is the lowest yards per reception on more than like 50 targets in the last, I don't even know how there was. I think there was a Ray McLeod year recently, but that one wasn't even close because he didn't get the number of anywhere near the number of targets that Wan'Dale had. Really a historically low season that Wan'Dale put up last year. I have that number coming all the way down to 99 targets. If you've got this, if you bring down the total number of passing attempts, you're not going to take it away from Malik Nabers. You're going to take it away from a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson, especially if you can continue to improve on running the ball this year like I expect them to. I have Wan'Dale taking the big step back here. So 99 targets for him with the catch rate at 70.7% for his career average. I have that coming in just below at 69.7 for 69 nice receptions. And the yards per reception still is just wild to me to see for a receiver, but he has never been above a 10 yards per reception in his career. His rookie year was his best, and it was 9.9, never been above 10. And so I have him coming in just below 9 at 8.99 and 3 touchdowns for Wan'Dale Robinson coming in at wide receiver 54 for him, and Darius Slayton coming in at wide receiver 58. Theo Johnson, the last big player that we need to talk about here, the second-year rookie coming in to lead this tight end room. I know that some people are going to talk about maybe a Tommy Fedone. I've seen a lot of him picked up over the last 2 weeks or so from waivers, and I have him projected in here for nothing. He is a UDFA tight end, and if I have Theo Johnson, Daniel Bellinger, and Chris Manhertz definitely making this roster, he has to at least make the roster for me to even think about putting any targets to this guy right now. It's a UDFA tight end. I'm not getting anywhere near as excited as apparently a lot of people are about one little blurb that came out. So Theo Johnson, for me, nothing else really matters in this offense. If we're looking back at that last year, they had 64 targets to the tight end. I have that coming up a little bit, just as you see Theo Johnson hopefully take a little bit more of that role and maybe some of that Wan'Dale Robinson work as well. So I have him coming in at the 62 targets for 43 catches, which is based on that 69.35 catch percentage. Last year, he was at a 67.4, so just a little bit of a tick up there. 10.84 yards per reception. Last year, he was at an 11.4, which is pretty high for a tight end. So I have that one just dropping down a little bit of regression back to normal mean for a tight end for 466 yards and the 3 touchdowns. He only caught 1 last year, but I'd like to spread this around a little bit more. It would be nice to give more touchdowns to this team as well, but I've only got 22 for the quarterbacks, and I had to kind of match that one up with the wide receivers whenever we got there, or all of the receiving options. So that will do it for the New York Giants. If we're going to recap real quick, 529 passing attempts total for 336 completions, 3,675 yards, 22 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. 485 rushes on the ground total for 1967, 15 touchdowns, and then the receiving numbers, 514 targets and the same number of receptions, yards, and touchdowns to the receivers for 1,014 plays and 37 touchdowns for the New York Giants. Again, thank you for tapping into this episode. If you want access to this sheet, there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes of it. As you can see, all the tabs down at the bottom. You can just request access to it. The link is in the comments below. And I will see you probably as you're watching this one today. We're going to have another video. It'll probably be after work again, so probably a later video coming out at the nighttime. So I'm not going to record another one right now. But that one will be kicking off. I believe we are going to the AFC North next. So we'll see what team that is, and we will get through the next couple of teams. Thank you so much for tuning in with me through the NFC East and the AFC East. We are now moving on to probably the AFC North, and I'll get that video out to you tomorrow. So appreciate it, guys. Follow along, tap back in. Peace.